Have you ever caught yourself thinking, I did everything right, so why does it feel like something's still missing? You loved deeply, you sacrificed, you gave everything, your time, your energy, your peace, for the people you raised. Maybe you're still doing it now, but somewhere along the way, maybe you lost track of where you went. If you're a mom in your 60s or older, and you've been carrying the title of good mom like a badge of honor, it might be time to stop and ask, is that badge weighing you down? You see, there's this image of the perfect mom many of us grew up believing in. She's sweet, patient, gives without question, never complains, and puts everyone ahead of herself. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Always being the good mom can sometimes hurt more than it helps. Not just for your kids, but for your own happiness and well-being. And no, this isn't about blaming yourself. It's about waking up to the idea that you can still grow, still change, and still live more freely, even in your 60s, 70s, or beyond. In fact, this might be exactly the right time to do it. Let's talk about what that really means. Let's talk about what happens when being nice becomes a trap. You've probably spent decades believing that kindness, patience, and selflessness are the highest virtues. And don't get me wrong, they absolutely matter. But kindness with no boundaries, patience that swallows your truth, selflessness that erases your identity, that's not healthy. That's martyrdom disguised as love. Being nice should come from a place of strength, not fear. But when it's rooted in the hope that others will like you more, or that your children will finally approve of you, it becomes something else entirely. It becomes a performance. Here's the thing. Constantly being nice doesn't guarantee connection. It doesn't build closeness. It doesn't even guarantee respect. In fact, when it's overdone, it can make people take you for granted. Not because they're bad, but because they don't see your real self. Only the pleasant version you've been trained to show. Have you ever said yes when you wanted to say no? Bit your tongue when your heart screamed to speak? Smiled through something that didn't feel okay? You're not alone. So many women of your generation were taught that keeping the peace is more important than being honest. But peace without truth isn't peace. It's silence. You're allowed to be kind and still say, no, not today. You're allowed to be generous and still expect reciprocity. You're allowed to be loving and still speak your truth, even if it makes someone uncomfortable. That's not being mean. That's being real. Now let's go deeper. Because being the good mom for decades can lead to something even more painful. Losing yourself. When was the last time you asked yourself what you actually want? Not for your kids, not for your partner, not for the house or the family, but for you? Somewhere along the line, maybe you forgot how to answer that question. It's okay. A lot of women do. When your whole identity has revolved around being needed, it's easy to lose touch with who you are outside of that role. You stop doing the things that lit you up. You stop dreaming. You start shrinking, not because you're weak, but because you've been so focused on everyone else. And now that the kids are grown, maybe they've even pulled away. You're left wondering who's looking after you. Reclaiming yourself doesn't mean abandoning your family. It means remembering that your needs, your voice, and your joy matter just as much. You don't have to be invisible to be valuable. You don't have to disappear to be loved. Let's talk about something else that often hides behind the good mom image. Passivity. Maybe you found yourself waiting for a thank you, for appreciation, for your adult child to finally call or visit more often. Waiting for the moment they recognize all the sacrifices you made. Waiting for things to change on their own. But waiting isn't the same as living. if you spend your days hoping someone else will change, or that your relationships will magically heal, you're handing over your power. You're putting your happiness in someone else's hands. You don't have to wait for someone to invite you in. You don't have to sit quietly on the sidelines. You can lead, not by controlling or fixing, but by showing up as your full self, by expressing what you want, by setting a tone of honesty and emotional maturity. It's not easy to go from passive to active after so many years of being accommodating, but that shift can be life-changing. When you step out of the good mom role and into your true self, you make space for real connection, the kind that's rooted in authenticity, not obligation. Now, let's be honest. This next one might feel familiar. Getting too attached too quickly. And I don't just mean in romantic relationships. I mean emotionally clinging to outcomes, to people, to expectations, especially when it comes to your children. Have you ever felt crushed when one of your kids made a decision you didn't agree with? Or panicked when they pulled away emotionally? That's not weakness. It's love mixed with fear. But when your sense of worth is tied to how others behave, you'll constantly feel like you're walking on eggshells. It's natural to care deeply, but getting overly attached to how things should be sets you up for disappointment. The truth is, your adult children are going to make choices, some wise, some painful, and your job isn't to control that. Your job is to live your life fully, even when they're distant. To love them, but not lose yourself in them. Letting go doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging. And in that release, you might just find a kind of peace that's been missing for years. Lastly, for today, let's talk about the trap of turning yourself into a checklist. Maybe you've asked your kids, "What do you need from me?" And they say, "Be supportive, be understanding, be patient." So you do all of that and more. You become the ultimate listener, the reliable babysitter, the emergency contact, the emotional sponge. And still, you feel like you're not enough, or worse, invisible. Because here's the truth. Ticking every box doesn't guarantee closeness. People don't connect with checklists. They connect with people, with presence, with truth, with the spark of someone who knows who she is and isn't afraid to show it. You're not here to fit someone's mold. You're here to live fully, love freely, and age boldly, not quietly. Let's keep going, because what we've uncovered so far is just the beginning. There's more to explore, more to unlearn, and more to embrace. You've spent years, maybe decades, giving your best. And while that kind of giving is beautiful, it can sometimes turn into something else. Overgiving. That's what happens when you give so much for so long that you forget where your limits are. And when you lose sight of your limits, others do too. One way this shows up, often without you even noticing, is when you start leading with money or material things. It starts small. You pick up the tab every time. You offer to help with bills. You buy the grandkids things they didn't ask for. Maybe you're just trying to stay connected. Maybe part of you wonders if they'd come around more if you made their lives easier. Maybe you believe that's what love looks like. But the truth is, love doesn't need price tags. When your relationships become transactional, when your presence gets tied to what you give, you risk losing the one thing that really matters: emotional closeness. People can come to expect your generosity without ever truly appreciating you. Not because they're bad people, but because you've taught them to look at your love through the lens of convenience. You deserve to be loved for who you are, not what you provide. So the next time you feel tempted to offer something material to bridge an emotional gap, pause. Ask yourself, what would happen if I just showed up as myself? No gifts, no solutions, just me. That's often where the real connection begins. Now let's talk about something that hides behind so many of our actions: the deep human longing to be appreciated. Maybe you don't say it out loud, but you feel it. You want to be seen, acknowledged, thanked. After all the birthday cakes, the school drop-offs, the sacrifices, and the sleepless nights, is it really too much to want someone to say, "Mom, I see you"? Of course not. But here's where things can get tricky. When you do something kind and secretly hope to be praised for it, that hope can turn into quiet disappointment if the praise doesn't come. That disappointment over time becomes resentment. And suddenly, your giving doesn't feel like love. It feels like a silent contract. I give, so you owe me. But true giving comes without strings. You're allowed to want appreciation. It's human. But you'll never feel truly fulfilled if your worth depends on someone else's reaction. The most powerful shift you can make is learning to do good simply because you choose to, not because you're waiting for applause. You don't need anyone to tell you you're enough. You already are. And that brings us to one of the hardest lessons many women learn late in life. You cannot keep saying yes to everyone else while saying no to yourself. Maybe you were raised to be agreeable, to go with the flow, to not make a fuss. So when someone needs something, help with the kids, a ride to the airport, a loan, a favor, you're the first to say yes, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's exhausting, even when every part of you is whispering, "I don't want to do this." But you smile and you say yes, because that's what good moms do, right? No, that's what women do when they've forgotten they're allowed to have boundaries. Saying no doesn't make you selfish. It makes you honest. It protects your energy, your time, and your emotional well-being. And when you say yes from a place of freedom instead of pressure, that yes means so much more. The next time you feel guilt tugging at your decision, try asking yourself this: if I say yes, will I feel peace or will I feel resentment later? Your body knows the answer before your mind does. Trust it. And speaking of emotions, let's talk about something that's easy to overlook: the emotional dynamics in your relationships. Many women, especially those who've spent a lifetime being the peacemakers, avoid conflict like the plague. They want harmony. They'd rather swallow their feelings than risk upsetting someone. So they nod along, stay quiet, push their discomfort down. But here's what nobody tells you. Real connection requires some emotional tension. It requires truth, honesty, vulnerability, and yes, sometimes, disagreement. When you avoid emotions, you don't actually create peace. You create distance. You teach people that you're fine when you're not. And then when you finally speak up, maybe after years of silence, it comes out as an explosion, not a conversation. You are allowed to feel angry, sad, disappointed, frustrated. You are allowed to ask hard questions and express your needs. That's not drama. That's real life. Being emotionally present doesn't make you difficult. It makes you human. You can still be loving and speak your truth. In fact, love without truth isn't love. It's performance. And you deserve more than applause. You deserve to be heard. Finally, let's talk about one of the most painful traps of all: blaming yourself for how things look rather than how they actually feel. You might find yourself looking in the mirror and wondering if your aging face, your gray hair, or your tired body is the reason someone pulled away. Or maybe you tell yourself, "I'm just too much," or "I'm not enough," depending on the day. When your child becomes distant, you ask, "What did I do wrong?" When you feel lonely, you wonder, "Is it because I'm not attractive anymore?" And all that blaming and all that shame starts to eat away at your spirit. Let me say this as clearly as I can. Your worth is not tied to your looks, your age, or your past. You are not the sum of your mistakes or the reflection in the mirror. You are not too much. You are not too little. You are exactly enough, exactly as you are. Blaming yourself is a way of trying to control what you cannot control. And the truth is, you can't control how others behave. You can't control if someone sees your value, but you can control how you show up for yourself. So instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" try asking, "What do I want for me now?" That question might just change your life. You've spent so many years taking care of others. Maybe now it's time to take care of yourself with the same tenderness, the same devotion, the same love, because you are still here, still worthy, and still capable of rewriting the story, starting today. Let's take a breath right here, because if you've made it this far, it means you're not afraid to look at yourself honestly, even if it's uncomfortable. That takes courage. And if no one's told you today, I want to say this: I'm proud of you. Now let's go a little deeper, because there's one more pattern we need to talk about. It's one that many good moms fall into without even realizing it. It's the pattern of always trying to fix things with favors. You see something wrong or someone hurting or something just a little out of place, and before anyone can ask, you jump in. You solve it. You smooth it over. You make it better, because that's what you've always done. But after a while, you might notice something. The more you do for others, the less they seem to do for themselves, or for you. Instead of feeling grateful, they start expecting it. Instead of connection, you feel resentment. You feel invisible. And yet, you keep saying yes. Because part of you believes that if you stop helping, you'll stop being needed. But you are so much more than what you do for others. You are not a to-do list. You are not a service. You are a human being, and your time, energy, and love are valuable. Not because of what they accomplish, but because they come from you. It's okay to stop fixing. It's okay to say, "I can't help with that right now." It's okay to let people figure things out on their own. In fact, sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step back, not to punish but to empower. Every time you say no with love, you're saying yes to your self-respect. And that matters more than any chore, errand, or favor ever could. Now let's talk about one of the most misunderstood dynamics in relationships, especially for those of us who pride ourselves on being honest and straightforward. It's this idea that we should avoid games. You've probably heard people say, "I don't like drama. I don't like games. I just want people to be real." And that makes sense. No one wants manipulation or dishonesty. But what many people call games are actually just the natural rhythms of human connection. Playfulness, curiosity, teasing, distance, and closeness. The dance of interest and mystery. These are not bad things. They're human things, especially in close relationships. Sometimes the good mom becomes so focused on being serious and responsible that she forgets how to be playful. She forgets that emotional tension. The push and pull of wanting to be seen, wanting to see someone else, not knowing what comes next, is part of what makes relationships feel alive. You don't have to give up your values to be emotionally dynamic. You can still be kind, honest, and full of integrity, while also allowing some space for spontaneity, for surprises, for things not being so predictable all the time. The next time you find yourself trying to explain everything, clarify everything, or fix every awkward moment, try letting it be. Try letting a little mystery breathe into the conversation. Trust that connection can grow in the space between certainty and curiosity. And most importantly, let yourself have fun again. Yes, even now. Especially now. Because here's the truth. You've earned the right to enjoy your relationships, not just manage them. And that brings us to one of the most powerful shifts you can make in your life. letting go of excuses. It's easy to tell yourself you're too old to change, too stuck, too tired, too whatever. But those are just stories. And stories can be rewritten. Maybe you've said, "I'm just not good at confrontation." Or, "This is just how I've always been." Or, "It's too late to change my relationships now." But what if none of that is true? What if you're just scared, and that fear is dressing itself up as logic? You are not too late. You are not too far gone. You are not just anything. You are here, right now, with breath in your lungs and a heart that still wants to love and be loved better, deeper, more freely. The only thing standing between you and the life you want might be a handful of beliefs you've never questioned. So let's start questioning them. What if being a good mom doesn't mean sacrificing yourself? What if boundaries don't push people away, but draw the right people closer? What if you stopped overfunctioning and started showing up fully, honestly, without the need to please? What if you let go of what everyone expects from you and just became you again? Maybe for the first time in decades. Because that woman, the one who laughs loudly, who speaks her mind, who rests when she's tired, who loves without losing herself, she's still in there. She may be buried under a few layers of obligation and years of habits, but she hasn't left you. She's waiting for you to call her back. And here's the beautiful part. It's never too late. Whether you're 60, 70, 80, or older, your story isn't over. You don't have to keep playing the same role just because you've always played it. You can write a new chapter, one where you're not just the caregiver or the fixer or the one who's always there. You can be the woman who is seen, who is heard, who is respected not for what she gives, but for who she is. That's not selfish. That's freedom. So if you've spent your life being the good mom, and you're starting to feel like it's not enough anymore, maybe it's time to stop. Not because you failed, but because you grew. Because you're ready for more. And because you deserve more. There's a different kind of love waiting for you. The kind that flows to you, not just from you. The kind that doesn't require you to prove your worth over and over again. The kind that starts when you finally say, "I'm not here to perform anymore. I'm here to live." And if no one has given you permission to do that yet, let me be the first. You don't have to be the good mom. You just have to be you. If this message speaks to your heart, share your thoughts in the comments. You're not alone, and your story matters more than you know. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the Strong Elderly Life channel for more conversations like this. Ones that uplift, challenge, and honor the season of life you're in. You've given so much to the world. It's time to give something back to yourself. Here's to living boldly, loving deeply, and showing up fully at every age.